want to address what's happening. And a lot of the Bloomberg analysts are saying, oh, well, with any asset that breaks an all-time high, we typically come down to retest those major levels. So we believe Bitcoin is going back down to 20,000. I want to talk about why I also don't believe that's the case, because these Bloomberg analysts obviously haven't looked into every other Bitcoin cycle where we've never came down to test a previous all-time high. We have a lot to look at today as we head into Turnaround Tuesday. You guys are watching the Snipers channel. My name is Naeem Al-Abaidi. We hit over 400 likes on our video yesterday. I thank each and every one of you snipers for tuning into our channel. The more you guys engage in our content, the faster we can grow. And so I really appreciate each and every one of you guys. Thank you for hitting 400 likes. It's been a while since we've hit that. And I first want to talk about exactly what's happening to Bitcoin. So notice here on the 4-hour chart where everything starts to morph from the 4-hour into the daily time frame, and we can use that principle from the 1-minute chart to the 5-minute chart. Everything starts from the smaller time frames. Notice how we're starting to come up to test this Ichimoku cloud resistance level for the first time right now, and we've yet to break above this Ichimoku cloud resistance area, and we have this $38,000 major resistance sitting there showing confluence around the resistance of the Ichimoku cloud. In my opinion, at this point, if we're able to see Bitcoin get above 38,000 US dollars, that's going to be the first confirmation that we're potentially going to start to test this resistance to potentially break out. And if we were to look at the schematics of this current symmetrical triangle and what target we would be looking at, notice how if this breaks out, it would take us above the $50,000 big even. And when we look at the daily chart, that would be a retest of the 50-period moving average on the daily chart. And so we want to monitor this potential breakout above 38,700 would be the confirmation with 4-hour and hourly confirmations, and that would be a 33% upside potential. And if I were to set a stop, it would be right there at that weekly open at 35,500, about 2 to 3%, and that would be a solid long opportunity. For those in the Discord, of course, we're going to be watching Bitcoin and every other altcoin as we always do, but just realize that we are still inside of this symmetrical triangle. We've yet to form another low. We've only formed higher lows, and that so far validates the recovery operation is still intact, but it won't have a confirmation until we're above 38,000, and really we want to break through this structural resistance at 38,500, and then we could potentially see 50,000 again. If we start to come down below 33,000 once again, that's where I would say it's the final draw for Bitcoin, because that opens the door to over 30% downside towards 24,000. Do I believe we'd come down to 20,000? Absolutely not. We've never tested a previous all-time high in any cycle after we've broken an all-time high. And so whatever the Bloomberg analysts want to say, you guys can watch Bloomberg all you want. We're focused on the technicals, and that's what matters to me. And so I do want to go into the 1 hour really quick, because we are heading towards the apex of the symmetrical triangle. So we could expect a breakout towards 70% of this apex. If we start to see continued sideways price action beyond 70% of this triangle, then that starts to assume that this is becoming weaker and the likelihood of this breaking down becomes a lot higher. We don't want to see an overextension into the apex of any symmetrical triangle. We want to start to see this break out and start to see upside. We don't want to see it come below the weekly open at this point at 35,500. That's also a major level. We're heading into Turnaround Tuesday. It was an extended weekend, and so we really want to monitor this symmetrical triangle for Bitcoin. But remember, we're still below this 200-day moving average, and I want to talk about what's happening to the total cryptocurrency market cap chart, because that weekly candle closed with a bearish tail, and that is extremely important. But I do want to talk about Ethereum really quick, because of course Ethereum right now is coming back inside of this channel, trying to test the resistance. And we know anytime Ethereum's inside of this channel range, it's been a very fair market value for Ethereum, where we've seen very healthy price action and a trend to the upside. And so now that we're back trying to test this channel, that's a positive sign. If we get above this monthly open at 2770, in my opinion, we could potentially see 3,500 again for Ethereum. We really want to monitor this Ethereum to Bitcoin chart, because of course, above 65,000 Satoshis, we maintain more bullish bias for Ethereum against Bitcoin. And with this Ethereum to US dollar chart for the downside, we don't want to come below this weekly open at this point at 2380. If we do, it opens the door back to get below 2,000 again. And so a lot of that will have to do with Bitcoin once again, whether it wants to break out or break down from that symmetrical triangle. But here's a huge puzzle piece that we have to address. As an umpire, I'm here to give you guys the most unbiased opinion on what's happening on these charts. And I'm specifically good at technical analysis. So whatever Bloomberg wants to say, they can say all they want. I'm looking at the charts, and so far the total cryptocurrency market cap chart is showing a sign of a potential bearish candle from our weekly close last week. And now we're fully below this 20-week moving average at $1.6 trillion in market cap, where we call home base. We need to get above or reclaim this $1.6 trillion level at some point or another with this weekly candle, or else if we start to come down below $1.38 trillion in market cap, the previous weekly open, that could open the door for potential new lows, maybe a higher low or a lower low form. I don't know if we'll come below 1 trillion, but we are in a very sensitive area right now when it comes to this total cryptocurrency market cap chart. And this is a huge puzzle piece that we need to address on the table. And so that could affect a lot of altcoins. And so I stick with my strategy, which is always place your bets on the fundamentally sound altcoins, not the meme coins, not the Doge coins, the Safe Moons, the Shibus of the world. We're talking about the Maker DAOs, the largest decentralized organizations. We're talking about the Cardanos with a lot of potential in developing countries, the Ethereums of the world. Those are the altcoins that, regardless of what this market does, will always produce a positive ROI over the long term. So notice how this others dominance is testing this previous weekly open right now, but we're still showing healthy price action, having a cup of coffee between two major moving averages, the 50 and 100 period moving average. That to me shows strength. As long as we're above home base at this 20-week moving average, you can see it's starting to come up to this resistance that we were talking about 2 weeks ago, where we have a multi-year resistance that's now support. As long as we're above home base with others dominance, I'm expecting altcoins to show strength against Bitcoin until and if we see a confirmation of a reversal. I maintain that thesis that altcoin season is still intact, especially with Bitcoin dominance far and below this 20-week moving average. So we want to monitor that. As long as we're sticking with the fundamentally sound altcoins, I think no matter what happens to the total market cap, we're fine. With Bitcoin right now, we need to get above this $38,000 level. Now, tomorrow, we're going to see traditional markets open. It was an extended weekend, and right now we're seeing gold break out. And so if you watch Bloomberg, they're starting to change the storyline for Bitcoin now that Elon Musk is addressing energy concerns. Now they're saying, oh, Bitcoin isn't actually a storage of value. Storages of value don't drop 50% out of nowhere. Bitcoin is actually just like an NFT. It's a collectible. Now they're starting to change the storyline. So just keep note of that, right? And we look at the gold to Bitcoin chart, and we need to address this potential cup and handle formation, because what is this chart telling us? We already predicted the top by inverting this chart, looking at the 2017 top of when Bitcoin against gold started to cross below this 50-period moving average. It was the start of the bear market. This is January 2018. And so we predicted the top using this chart. Now we need to get back on this chart and talk about, well, where is this chart going? What is it trying to tell us? Well, here's what it's trying to tell us on the daily chart. This 50-period moving average is about to cross below this 100. We could potentially see a death cross happen here. What we really want to monitor right now is this cup and handle formation. When we uninvert this chart, notice how we do have a cup and handle, a very solid formation. A confirmation of the downside or upside is going to come at the base of this initial handle, which is right around that $4,500 area. Or if we cross 6,100, and this is a decimal, by the way, I'm just naming the number, then that could assume upside for this. So we just want to monitor this chart. For those tuned to the Cyber channel, you know we will be monitoring this chart as we always do with traditional markets, because there's such a correlation between all of these markets. And then with the DXY, we're still chilling, having a cup of coffee. I'm not too worried about what's happening here with the DXY. This is exactly what we want to see in order to assume a healthy environment for the cryptocurrency market to see the path of least resistance, which is always going to be sideways to a little bit higher. US oil doing well. Commodities, of course, are going to do very well, especially if precious metals are doing well. And so a lot of puzzle pieces on the table. S&P 500 just kind of chilling right now. We might be coming down here to test this previous week low at 4150. Who knows? We'll see what happens on turnaround Tuesday. But a lot of puzzle pieces on the table. I think the biggest thing I want you guys to take home is, what is this total cryptocurrency market cap chart telling us with this weekly candle close below this 20-week moving average? Are we going to see this come below the 200-day moving average and retest it for the third time? If we do come and knock on this door, once again, you knock on a door too many times, that door opens. So we just want to monitor this. I still stick with my opinion that as long as we don't form any further lows for Bitcoin, I believe we've bottomed out at 30,000, where we saw this initial low here on the 19th of May. We formed a higher low here on the 23rd of May, and so far we've yet to form any lows below this area. And so as long as this support holds, I believe we're going to be fine. And with that, I do want to pick a book giveaway winner. Once again, I appreciate each and every one of you guys. We hit over 400 likes yesterday. It's been a while since I've seen that, so that meant so much to me. I love reading your guys' comments. I want to pick a winner. Just comment below and you have a chance to win this book. Remember to share this video as well, and we'll go ahead and choose a winner. I'll be switching this book, by the way, soon, so I know some of you are asking that have won before. And let's go ahead and see here. We'll go ahead and pick Cledius Jones. Says, timely, concise, insightful, appreciated. Thanks much. Send me a message on Instagram. The link is in the description below. You want a book.